right, well, let's get going here. We'll talk about mulches a little bit. So we'll start with some facts about mulches. Why do we mulch? Why do we need to mulch? Most of us know this. Increased growth of trees, prevents erosion, even weed control, lots of things. But one of the most important facts we don't think of, we need to feed the biology or the soil food web we just talked about. Some mulches feed it, some mulches don't. Some mulches tie up nutrients, creating increased insect and disease problems. Some mulches prevent soil crusting, some prevent erosion, different things. So a good mulch does a lot of things in the garden, and a bad mulch causes a lot of harm. And what we forget about is that coarse mulches often provide the most benefit. I don't know how many times, almost several times a day, people come into my business wanting a fine, smooth mulch. Well, fine grained mulches, air and water cannot penetrate them as easily. Also, little things we don't think about probably, but 80% of all our spiders come out at night and are hunters. They don't weave webs. So if you've got a coarse mulch, they can get down in the cracks and crevices to hide during the day. Then they come out at night and either are spider, or they, well, maybe spider mites or aphids or whatever, but you got to give them a home. If you use a fine textured mulch, you lose that benefit. This is from the USDA talking about water usage in plants. The soil 70% Fahrenheit, which is very common in our part of the country, 100% of the moisture is used for plant growth. We go up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is our soils in Houston get 130 degrees in the summertime. It's bare ground. Only 15% of the moisture is used for growth. 85% is used for cooling. By the time we get to 130 degrees, which is common, plants can't grow. So that's one of the functions of a good mulch. It insulates the soil to keep it cool so plants can use the moisture for growth rather than just for cooling. So we're going to talk about three types: organic mulches, inorganic, and we'll talk about living mulches. Pine bark has actually been found to increase soil surface temperatures, just the opposite of what we want. And it causes leaves to lose water. It attracts fire ants. Going back to the question, why does pine bark not rot on a tree? Where does turpentine come from? Used for paint thinner, disinfectants. From the pine tree, rosins, waxes, phenolics, terpenes, tannins. They all kill microbes. So we talked about hardwood. What about cedar bark or cedar mulch? Is it good mulch, bad mulch? Well, where does cedar oil come from? Cedar trees. Get it? We have to cook. Most of the mulches, they have to cook it to get the oils out of it to make the cedar oil, leaving behind raw wood. So what are we going to do with the raw woods? Oh, we'll chip it and sell it for cedar mulch. So when it's in a bag, it still has an odor from the thing, but as soon as you put it in your lawn, it disappears in a couple days. So it doesn't repel insects. Raw woods, 500-to-1 carbon nitrogen ratio. It's only a single thing. It's like I enjoy it. Or maybe just eggs, something health food. If you had eat nothing but eggs the rest of your life, you'd die of malnutrition. Well, when you're feeding your plants one type of mulch, you're making them sick because it's not good soil, and actually it's pulling away. Cedar doesn't work, and juniper is actually the one from the hill country. It's not as phytotoxic as Juniper's virginiana, our eastern red cedar, which you can actually kill, has herbicidal effects. Months ago, I saw redwood. Again, 500-to-1 carbon nitrogen. It's rot resistant because it kills microbes. Who wants to cut down a 5,000-year-old redwood tree to make mulch? It's terrible. It's environmental crime. But people wouldn't do it if people didn't buy it. Okay, so there's some bad ones. What about pine needles? Good. One good thing about pine needles, certain species, it's loose and airy, but it's got to be 6 inches thick to give you the benefits. So it takes a lot of it. So grass clippings. Well, all the first mulches are fungal decomposed primarily by fungus. Grass clippings are decomposed by bacteria. You ever had a bunch of grass clippings in a plastic bag or a trash can on the curb for a few days and you open it up? That wonderful aroma, that's bacterial pathogenic decay. The other problem you got to be careful of in grass cuttings, it can pack down, sealing the soil where air and water cannot get into the soil. So it's best to compost it first if you want to use it. Then we got ash and mulch. Well, one of the ways when we burn coal, all the ash goes down here, along with the heavy metals and radioactive elements get in the ash. It has a pH almost 11. It's worse than Drano. It's a hazardous waste. So what a lot of the coal companies do, they pay a bark company, take it, you mix in this ash with your bark, it's so alkaline, it burns it, chemically burns it black in about 42 hours, and they sell it to people. You put in your salt, makes the soil very alkaline, changes your pH, all the chemicals in it. So it's very toxic and bad for plants, but it's very profitable. So ash and mulches are not very good. They're very common in Houston because we got a lot of coal here and a lot of coal-fired generating plants. Dyed mulch. And you were asking about dyed mulch. I get that question so many times. I copied this out of one of my magazines, an advertisement. Colored mulch equals a profit. Not make gardens grow better, makes money for the person selling it. And I tell people, they ask, how can I put soil or mulch good? If they sell colored mulch, you know they don't care lick about quality. They just want your money. That's a big warning sign. Carbon nitrogen. That means it's going to pull nutrients out of your soil for a couple of years. Stressing it. All wood is food for what? Pest insect. Termites. You just get, oh, here's a smorgasbord for termites. Yeah. Deplete soil nutrition and other nitrogen, then of course insect disease. No biodiversity, doesn't feed the soil biology. Good for weeds and creates pathogens, no nutrients. No beneficial microbes. Destroys soil structure, low humus, repels water when dry, becomes hydrophobic. So when it rains, it just runs off. It doesn't soak into the soil. Kind of like that dog pig fungus. Bark mulches keep water from soaking into the soil when it rains. Doesn't hold water. It's got cancer-causing ingredients in it. It looks at, red's not in nature. Black doesn't even occur in nature. We get a deep chocolate brown, that's all we ever see in nature. So it just doesn't look natural. So native mulch, the one you want interested in. Well, there's two types of native mulch. Native just means made from all the species in your area. Why do deer, beavers, squirrels eat branches and limbs for food? Vitamins, minerals, protein. So the branches and limbs, say 3-4 inches in diameter or less, that's about 120 to 1 carbon nitrogen ratio. Trunk of trees over 500. Like one of the things we do, we only use the branches and limbs, and we compost it for about a year. If you separate the big and little, you can see it's got over a 50% compost content. So naturally, the compost, the fines are denser, they settle. The woodier pieces are lighter, they float, and recreates the forest floor. Again, you got to the forest, there's no disease, no weed problems. You got soil, you got 1-2 inches of brown crumbly stuff, compost, and you got your twigs and branches on top. Mulch. Well, anyway, as native mulch breaks down, it breaks down the clay. Remember that slide of the clay minerals? This is food for the bacteria that breaks clay apart. Other mulches don't feed the microbes required to turn it. So also you can tell by feeling it. Humus content, you can feel it, smells good, feels good. It's so dense in nutrients and beneficial microbes. Anyway, so it increases plant growth, increases soil's ability to hold water. It's, like I said, the research that Canada's funded, it's the highest quality mulch there is. This type of mulch, as you can see, really increases the organic matter of your soil. It's food for the microbes. Earthworms, that normally be a little field worm, 2-3 inches long, big around as a pencil lead, become 5 inches and big around as a pencil. So now they can aerate your soil more. They can do more work because they're feeding on the microbes on it. Universities have done studies that it does a better job of stopping erosion because it's so rich in microbes. One, you get a physical interlocking of the fibers. 2, bacteria put out chemicals called polysaccharides that are glue. That kind of glues it, plus the fungal hyphae glue it together. So it's very erosion resistant. So Then, of course, as you start doing it, you can start getting the crumb structure, air and water gets in your soil. More air, roots can go deeper, and the process continues. So again, there's before and after for earthworms. And again, earthworms help spread mycorrhizal force through your soil. So if you have a mulch like pine bark that they don't like, they're not going to be there. They're not going to be spreading those good fungi around in your beds. There's some studies, some data, back 5-year study, that tree mass under the native wood or the native mulch, 100% better than using bare ground. Significant benefits. Trees compost 82% better. So when you compost it, you're getting double the benefits versus even 60, just only 69% improvement with fertilizers. So it does more than fertilizers. So what about fire? One aspect of mulches we don't think about is the fire aspect. Several years ago, I took a week-long course at a Texas Tech University in Junction on prescribed burns to get my license. And they covered a lot. Like in 2011, remember the massive fires we had out through, particularly in Bastrop area and different areas around Texas and Woodlands and Montgomery? What was not reported is that thousands of homes caught fire, not because of the flames from the forest fire getting to them, because of the mulch. The ember floated in the wind, landed on their thing, caught the mulch on fire, and went up to their house, burned the house down. So several universities have done ignition tests. They take a propane torch. That's a pretty hot flame. Melt lead with the copper. They applied 15 seconds of fire, then blew the torch. And the test was done not when it was fresh, but 1 year after application, so it could weather a little bit. So some mulches wouldn't even ignite after 15 seconds with a propane torch. So let's look at the results. The ground recycled pellets, which is what you make the dyed mulches, the red or the black dyed mulches with, 100% of the time it ignited even after a year. Color dyed, same thing. Shredded pine bark, 3 out of 4 tests. Straw, 2 out of 4. Cypress, pine bark nuggets. Well, you can see which is, from a fire perspective, which one's the most dangerous, besides being bad for the plant. Rubber chip mulch is very dangerous. Plus, it gives off all kind of fires when that rubber mulches toxic to plants. There's papers out on my website, goes more in detail of each of these. But like pine straw, beautiful mulch, extremely flammable. So anytime you don't want to use pine straw near your house, if you're out in the landscape away from the house, it's fine. You don't want to leave something where it could trail fire, could burn down a flower bed and then get to your house. So, but anyway, the native mulch that I just showed you here, 15 seconds, couldn't even get it to ignite. Some warning signs of a bad mulch: vinegar, sour milk, vomit, rotting meat smell. Those are all signs of a bad mulch, or bad compost too. Ammonia, rotten egg smells. This is over Harris County on Sugarland Howell Road. Every 15 feet they put in a tree. They used a cheap mulch on it. You can see how chlorotic the tree was becoming. Every tree, just about 90% of the trees died. 3 years later, they're still mulching that, and they're still watering those dead stumps. It's the tax dollars at work. Whoever that maintenance supervisor was should have been fired. But they had to go low bid, so they bought the cheapest mulch, which was the most expensive, because it was probably a $40,000 landscape, that many miles of trees. They lost almost every one of them. They lost. Other things, when you put volcano mulch, it causes the tree to rot. That's why so many trees fall over in Harvey. And so anyway, so I better stop there.